not in the usual critical way that Larry and I tend to be, but in a way that Ferdinand thinks he's got some suggestions.
And if you want your taxes to go down, you call Ferdinand. He'll take your number.
And I've got some suggestions, and Ferdinand and I don't always agree on everything, but the thing about him is we can sit down and have a civil conversation.
And that's why I'm
somebody
positioned between them.
But no, Ferdinand is aware. He is illuminated. He knows what's going on. We'll be right back after these short messages. This is Kent Deere, Larry Nesbitt on the Kent and Larry Show, WJNT Jackson, Jackson's original and #1 News Talk Radio show, and we are #1 in Beat 4 of Hines County, and don't you forget it. All right, we're back here on WJNT, Kent and Larry Show on Monday morning. My special guest this morning is Ferdinand McAfee. Good morning, Ferdinand.
Good morning, fellas. How are you all this morning?
Glad to have you with us this morning. Ferdinand is I don't know what he is. I won't let him tell you, but he knows a lot about and knows a lot of folks here in Jackson, and he is, as Larry and I are very concerned about getting Jackson back to the type of city that we can all be proud of. And by all, I mean black, white, rich, poor, female, male, North Jackson, South
Good looking,
chickens and squirrels. There's everybody.
Yeah, old, young, us old folks too. So, Ferdinand, introduce yourself and let's get started here.
Hello, my name is Ferdinand McAfee. I'm basically, as it relates to this morning and this broadcast, I'm a diehard Jackson and Mississippi overall supporter.
There you go.
Ben Allen, did you hear that?
Ben Allen's a great guy.
He is. We trained him.
Well, my belief is that Jackson is really a wonderful place. You know, people cause problems, cities don't cause problems. Cities have streets and buildings. Now, the degree to how well those streets are kept and the buildings are maintained depend on the people. But I believe if people give Jackson a chance, just wait a minute, don't pack up the U-Hauls yet and run south and north and everywhere else. Just see what the new guy is going to do. He might just surprise you. You never know. Because as Jackson goes, Mississippi goes. It's the capital of the state. You can't get around it. So we might as well just get together and say, let's just give it another try, like we do everything else. Nothing else in our life is perfect. Do we give up on our families and husbands and cars? Some people do. We should give Jackson just a little bit more.
Well, like Larry and I have been saying, look, we wish the new man best because we will benefit from Jackson's coming back like it used to be. The fact that we're white and we're in the minority doesn't mean that we don't have interest in it. That means we got more interest in it, and we don't have the power anymore. But what we do have is a driving interest for Jackson to succeed, because if Jackson succeeds, we'll succeed. If this guy fails and his administration fails, we fail.
And right off the bat, I salute his choice for police chief very much.
And
I
the fire
great
chief.
respect.
Yes.
However, setting that aside, I would also be honest enough to say, in my mind, there are far more negatives for this mayor entering office day one than there are positives.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean that I don't want him to succeed.
Yes.
And it's not what he has done or hasn't done in politics. It's more of what he has said and what he has been a part of and certain groups that he is associated with. And I question what's in his heart as well as his mind. But people might say that about me too. So yeah, we're giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yes, yes. Because I believe when you look at Jackson, there was a time, and I wasn't here at that time, Jackson had 5 movie theaters from what I understand. So if the city...
On Capitol Street.
On Capitol Street. Wow.
And then others around.
Yeah, that's amazing. So as history goes, you know, if Jackson once was able to support something like that, then the streets haven't changed. They haven't shrunk or gotten smaller. So that means that it can happen again. So all we have to do is just reinvent the foolishness that has gone on over probably the last 20 or 30 years.
That's right. It's not all the current administration or the prior administration or black people. It's not all,
No.
because it's been going on a long time.
It takes everybody to make a mess.
That's right.
So it's going to take everybody to fix it. So I think if everybody just chip in just a little bit, like a potluck dinner, just a little bit of faith and hope. If you believe in the big man, which I do because I didn't make myself, even as big as the big man is, he says, if you have just the faith of a mustard seed in me, then I can do amazing things in your life. So if you just believe in your city, and then it translates to the state, because you know, just face it, when you go outside of Mississippi, across the nation and in the world, we have a very negative stereotype. In a lot of instances, we've given great things to the world, But it's a lot of people who still think we don't have we have dirt roads and it's not paved and we don't wear shoes. So if we can't feel better about a city that's within Mississippi, then how can we challenge people outside of Mississippi who think we're all backwards?
And we have a number of groups and people in this city who are quite capable of participating and contributing in many ways and don't.
Exactly.
They're good at being a troublemaker. They're good at spouting off.
Rebel rousers.
That's it.
Well, let's get specific here, and let's just say, for instance, now, let's categorize by importance the problems that the city has, and see if we can put forth some sort of a way that everybody can participate in it and be proud of it. I would say the number one problem to me that the city has right now is crime.
Okay, good. I'm glad you brought that up. Let's address that.
Let's do.
Now, first of all, crime. You say Jackson is crime-ridden. It's, they're shooting like the Wild Wild West, which, may or may not be true. But when you look at the physics that governs everything, I believe in universal principles. If I jump off of the building, doesn't matter if I'm rich, poor, black, or white, gravity is going to put me on the ground. So we'll start there. If you look at the city, Jackson is the capital of the state, which means it has more people per capita than any other municipality. So crime is going to reflect the fact that you have more people in Jackson than you do any other state. So naturally, you're going to have more crime in that respect. So I'm not so sure it's just that they're buck wild in Jackson. Second thing is, Jackson is a place, they're deinstitutionalizing places like Whitfield. They're doing it across the nation. So they're doing it here, and they don't have the community-based services, which means they don't have housing for the people to go. If you don't see stray cats roaming the streets, it's because they have animal shelters. If you don't see the elderly roaming the streets, it's because they have nursing homes. But there are no provisions in housing that is substantial for the number of mentally ill that's on the street. So they deinstitutionalize Whitfield, they place them on the street, or they send them back to the counties that they come from. The family can't handle them because a lot of times they're violent, they're not well. So they put them on a bus, and Jackson accepts them. So a lot of times, a lot of these heinous crimes are committed by people who don't even live in Jackson.
Well, wait a minute now. When I sit and watch TV, almost every time I see young, black, particularly, sometimes it's white, but mostly black, boys that are 18, 19, 20 years old. Now, those are not mental patients.
Well, I'm going to speak from 12 years with the Hinds County Sheriff's Department. We have a broken legal system in this city and in this county. Now, some judges don't want to hear that. I'm sorry, get your head out of the sand. It's broken. We take way too long to adjudicate crimes. We add more felonies to the docket every year than the courts dispose of, so the backlog only grows. 2, we don't have the room and the money to continue to incapacitate, or shall we say institutionalize, the number of people that go to jail.
No.
But that goes back to the court system. Number 3, we have a breakdown of the family. We have too many children running the streets that have never known who their father is, may not have a family to go home. There's no one to hold them responsible, no one to hold them accountable. We have a broken public school system that spends way too much money. A $150 million bond issue, in my opinion, is right down the tube because it has not done one thing to address the percentage of dropouts. We pay a six-figure income to the guy that's head of the college board that used to be a head of public schools. He can't show anything he's done to help the problem. But the crime problem we have, don't limit it to people that have a mental problem. We have animals running the streets that are out of control and no way to get them under control and no way to put them behind bars and keep them there. And the taxpayers can't keep funding this ad infinitum.
Well, let me say, that's pretty good, Larry.
You know
that's
that I'm emotional,
man.
because
you're
I've
on
been
it.
there and I've seen it.
I believe it. Well, when you think about this, when we don't discount a mental problem,
No, I'm not.
when somebody decides
that would mean I have to discount Ken.
when someone decides that it's a good idea to break in someone's house in broad daylight, whether they're home or not, and take something that does belong to them, that's a mental problem. You can classify it however you want to. There's a lot of undiagnosed. There are a lot of people who need treatment in this place. The Sheriff's Department has a good program now. It's called the Hinds County Crisis Intervention Team. It is something that's in place, because a lot of these problems, just like failure, nobody just wakes up one day and they're a failure. You get a drinking problem, then you lose your wife because you don't pay the rent, then you lose the house, and then the next thing you know, you're sleeping on the street. So crime and failure is systemic. So in order to change that and turn it back around, you have to start with the system. So there is a system in place. There was a bill that was passed. The Sheriff's Department runs it. It's a community-based program, and it is starting to slowly address crime. When you look at the incident that happened in Clinton where the guy worked on a family's house and then he walked back over, that guy was mentally ill. Yeah. They know him down at Billy Brumsfield house. A lot of these crimes that you see, whether you know it or not, the most heinous ones, we're not talking about the petty robberies. That's something else that takes care of that. But the ones that really make the news, the most heinous ones, those are people in large part that suffer from mental illness. Because anybody who chooses to do crazy things or silly things versus doing the right thing, that's a
Is it a mental illness or just a hardened heart?
Well, they kind of go hand in hand.
I mean, can you say that if there is a dog out there that attacks someone, that's a mental problem? What you've got is you got humans acting like wild animals, and we're going to have to treat them like wild animals.
When you look at
compassion goes only so far.
But it's a lot of different. We're talking about the kind of crime that is the systemic crime that Jackson get the most bad rap for.
Okay.
A lot of that is not just breaking in cars. You know, some of that is a little scary, but that's not the thing that scares people most. The thing that scares people most is what happened in Clinton. You know, that somebody's going to do some work at your house and come back and kill you. You know, that...
When you find two bodies in a ditch with bullets in the back of the head, or a body from under the house.
Yeah, that's just a little bit more than bad people who just are mischievous. So I think that has a lot to do with crime. And I brought that up to say that there is something in place that's beginning to slowly unravel that and identify the people who have been released. And there are some people that have been in Whitfield that should never be released, and that's just the truth.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, if that's the case, and then we've got all these young, on the other hand, we've got a lot of young, perfectly sane
yes, that's a different
boys
story.
going out and breaking in homes and
cars
with guns.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's armed robberies and scaring good citizens to death with all that kind of stuff, and in some cases roughing them up a little
or the
bit.
drug problem.
Yeah.
And we know that our court system is slow and what doesn't work right and everything else. I don't see any solution to that problem other than you've got mentally ill folks, you've got crooks and thieves, you've got teenage hellions, you get people like that. And we don't have the ability to prosecute them properly. The only solution, looks to me like, is to build a great big jail somewhere and keep these people off the street for public protection.
We call them urban terrorists. Two-bit, half-baked, dirtbag thug punks.
I'd have to agree. I go along with that. But the issue is how you know, because this isn't a problem that was created yesterday. Because the people who are creating these that are the criminals, when you say they're young and African American, they're probably 15 to 25, 30 in that range. So they started somewhere. Mm-hmm. So you work on the crime to get rid of the people who are truly insane, who should not be out. And then what we're doing now, we're working on a STEM school. We want to bring a science, technology, engineering, and math school here. Because a lot of these things there have been gaps in the system. They've missed it a long time ago. They didn't just get that way. So I don't know what you can do about those particular groups other than build a big jail perhaps and put them in there.
Well, I mean, that seems, I was being serious.
Yes.
The first thing is to get them away from harming other people.
Yes.
Then we can, once the streets are clean, then we can proceed to do all of these feel-good things that need doing.
The substantial thing, they feel good because they're the right things to do. And they're the things that
absolutely.
make other cities prosperous. And when we don't do them, then we end up with the cesspool.
But when kids are being taught in school, or when they feel like they're not being taught by other kids, that being smart is not good.
It's not good.
And acting white is not good, or
Exactly.
being this. You know, all the things that we used to think were good and they got you ahead in the world, or you're considered a nerd or a misfit or this, that, and the other. But, you know, what are we going to do with that? Look, we got a break coming up here. We'll be right back with Ferdinand McAfee. Ferdinand is offering hopefully a different perspective to us, and we're glad he's here. And by the way, you know, if any of you would like to come and talk to us, talk on this show about things that can be done better for Jackson, we're all for that. Larry and I are native Jacksonians, and we want it better. We're being critical because we're trying to bring an awareness of the problems. We're not dog cussing individuals. Well, I guess we do, but
Ferdinand, we haven't threatened you or beat up on you, have we?
I'm afraid right now.
all right, We'll be right back after these messages. WJNT, Ken and Larry Show.
If something ever happens to you, can I have your Samsung?
You can.
All right, we're back here on WJNT. Ken Deere, Larry Nesbitt, the Ken and Larry Show. Our special guest is Ferdinand McAfee this morning. Ferdinand, we got about 5 minutes, and I want to hear what you have to say about if you were the mayor or you were the king or whatever, how would you go about organizing the 82% black population in Jackson, where all the power is now, the voting power anyway? How would you go about making that change so that we could get good people elected to office? I'm not saying we don't. We may have that proven, but to move us forward, because it's not the white population is in such a minority now that we're not going to determine the future. The black folks are.
Well, I think the same thing that it takes to cause a problem is the same thing you take to fix a problem. So these problems, I don't think anybody deny, were caused by humans, by black and white and green and yellow. So everybody has to get together, because the white people still have to live in Jackson, the ones who choose to, and the black people do too. So I don't think any particular sector can fix it alone. Everybody has to contribute their little bit. One thing that certainly has to happen, like you run a corporation. Corporations, they do a multitude of things at one time. They do their advertising, their marketing, they do their market analysis for new markets and business development. And you have to do them all consistently at the same time, because you get one of them out of whack, the whole thing falls apart. So crime is a very, very important issue, but you can't just address crime alone. We have to raise the median income some kind of way, which means you have to get corporations in here, major corporations. But in order to bring corporations, you got to have a good school, because people who make $200,000, $300,000 a year, they're not going to send their kids to JPS or a school that they don't like, and they're not going to get up and drive 45 minutes in traffic each way to take their kids to school. So it's a systemic problem that you have to address as a system. You got to identify crime, and a big part of that is like what we're talking about, the CIT program. Identify the people who should not even be out of Whitfield at all, who need to really be in a place that's contained, so you don't have the rapid, heinous crimes. He's appointed a good police chief, so that should hopefully address the young hooligans, as you say, who are just wayward. Then you get a school here. You fix the school system so that corporations can come, and then you get some corporations in here so you can increase the median income, and that's what allows people. It doesn't matter how well you feel and what's in your heart. Money runs this world.
So you think that the school system is the first step, because that will make the atmosphere favorable to having corporations come in,
Absolutely.
which will then provide
So how
jobs
do we turn the school system around? Looks to me like the only focus of anything in the Jackson Public School System so far has been on a bow tie.
Well, this much is true, but the bow tie guy is not from Mississippi, and that's not a bad thing.
He didn't bring a very good track record coming here either.
Well, he didn't bring the whole problem of the system either. It is a system. So when you're dealing with a system, all these things have bylaws, and the train moves slow, but you can't induce a catalyst as you can in anything and change it. You have to change it from
But you
within.
got to have kids that stay in school in order to educate them.
Yeah, and it helps that they have decent schools. The children aren't crazy of any kind. All these children are a lot smarter than we are. You can give them the Samsung Galaxy, and man, a 5-year-old will smoke me on this thing. So they're very, very observant. And when kids in school, basically, you're asking a lot of these kids when they've basically been let down by adults, both white and black adults, legislators and representatives. They live in Jackson, and the last new high school they've had was Forest Hills, which was in the 70s, from what I understand. So these kids know that all around them, everybody else has new schools with brand new technology. So you put them in old schools and you do a bond issue to put them in trailer houses. Do you know that there are schools that still have the equivalent of trailer houses that these kids have classes in right here in Jackson in 2013? And then you get on them about doing the right thing and what they should do when all around them they see calamity. So I say the children are doing what is expected of them based on the things that they're given. And when you invest in them, they will do the things that kids in Madison County and other kids do when you believe in them, when you give them the best. And that's what parents are supposed to do. So we fail these kids, first of all. So some of the stuff they're doing, it is their fault, but we've pretty much set them up for that. So when you
it's
change
the parents'
that,
fault too, because it's not the job of the school and the taxpayers to be the parent of the child.
That is true.
And they got families that are failing miserably, and I don't care if you gave everybody an Apple computer and an iPhone. Truth of the matter is, I don't believe that's going to help make them learn if when they walk out of that school that day and go home, they're met with chaos.
this is true. That is a big problem. But the interesting thing is that we have to, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to slowly chip away at the things that you can control. They have the charter school bill that just passed. I'm not 100% aware of everything that involves a charter school, but anything that brings an opportunity to have a form of education that works, it doesn't matter to me what you call it. So it brings an opportunity to inject some different kinds of things.
Is the elephant organic, fat-free, and free-range?
It is a green elephant, yes. It's ergonomically.
We got to go, folks, but fear not. Tomorrow morning, we will do this again from 8 to 9, and
You free to come back
We'd
tomorrow
like to have.
I'll do it.
But not at 8:30. We're talking about at
this
8
is
o'clock.
true. That's the truth.
We'll get Ferdinand back in the morning, and we'll continue this. And we're going to welcome your calls at 366-1180. We're looking for solutions, folks. We're looking for ways to get started. Let's work together. I hear that 1,000 times a day. Everybody says let's work together. Everybody wants to work together, but somebody's got to come up with a beginning point. And let's try to find those things for Jackson, okay? We'll start again in the morning at 8 to 9 on the Kent and Larry Show, WJNT, Mississippi's original and #1 news talk radio station. And don't you miss tomorrow.
So, rather than what I'm saying, we won't wait till 8:30. When we say 8 to 9, we really start.
I ended up at the old one on Lakeland Drive.
Yeah, we really kick off at like 10 or 12 minutes after 8. We just come and do the whole thing.
Okay.
I want to challenge you.